Hello and welcome to Science Monitor, your favorite weekly program on all that is happening in the world of science and technology in and around the country. First of all, let's take a quick look at the headlines. India's Mars orbiter mission Mangalyaan moving towards its destination on track. Spacecraft Rosetta reaches the orbit of Comet 67P. Antibiotic abuse in the poultry industry emerging as a threat to human health. Only 8.2% of our total DNA may be functional, states a new study. IPCC presents its 5th assessment report for South Asia. And in today's In Focus, we shall talk about genetically modified crops. And now news in details. India's Mars orbiter mission Mangalyaan is moving steadily towards its destination. It is expected to reach Mars on 24th of September this year. Earlier, ISRO was planning a path correction exercise for it in August, but as this mission is right on track, so the team closely following its trajectory has ruled out the need for any path correction as of now. More in this report.
Researchers of Indian Space Research Organisation have declared that India's Mars orbiter mission Mangalyaan is moving steadily towards its destination and is on track. While researchers were planning a trajectory correction maneuver in August, the path correction exercise has now been ruled out given that Mangalyaan is on the right track, closely following its trajectory. Slowly approaching its destination, Mangalyaan is expected to reach Mars on September 24th this year. So far, the spacecraft has completed more than 3/4 of the 300-day voyage in deep space towards Mars. ISRO has initially planned a total of 4 trajectory correction maneuvers for Mangalyaan, of which 3 have already been successfully carried out and the 4th is being abandoned now as the orbiter is following the right path. In the last crucial milestone, ISRO performed the 3rd trajectory correction maneuver on its Mars orbiter spacecraft in July and before that in June. ISRO will perform the Mars orbiter insertion on September 24th. The ambitious Mars mission under a ₹450 crore project was launched from Sriharikota in Andhra Pradesh on board the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle on November 5th last year. When the spacecraft reaches the Red Planet, it is expected to provide the scientific community with vital data for gaining better understanding of the planet and space.
This Wednesday marked a historical day for the space research as the spacecraft Rosetta, launched by the European Space Agency, reached the orbit of Comet 67P. Launched in 2004, spacecraft Rosetta has been travelling for a decade to reach the comet and will be the first ever spacecraft to land on a comet. Let us learn more about the adventurous voyage of spacecraft Rosetta in this report.
6th August 2014 marked a historic day in space research as the European spacecraft Rosetta became the first ever to orbit a comet. Rosetta was launched by the European Space Agency using Ariane rocket in March 2004. It has reached the orbit of Comet 67P/Churyumov-Gerasimenko after a long travel of 10 years, 5 months and 4 days. The spacecraft has covered more than 3 billion miles and will now accompany Comet 67P with a speed of about 62,000 miles per hour as it orbits the Sun. Rosetta will follow the comet for a year and collect data on the changes that the comet undergoes as it approaches the Sun. The data collected by the spacecraft is expected to further our understanding about the composition of comets and unlock some of the mysteries regarding the origin of solar system. Scientists also believe that the data collected by Rosetta by mapping the surface of the comet will help them answer the interesting questions as to whether water and chemicals that make up the building blocks of life was brought to Earth by a comet. Rosetta will also map and measure the gravitational pull of the comet. Based on this data, scientists plan to launch a probe called Philae on the surface of the comet this November for the first time in history. Rosetta, in its first set of pictures of 67P/Churyumov-Gerasimenko, showed that the comet is asymmetrical in shape with 2 segments connected by a neck. The comet 67P is a 3 by 5 kilometer rock and was discovered in 1969. Currently, the comet and the space probe lie some 250 million miles from Earth, about halfway between the orbits of Jupiter and Mars. The comet is expected to come closest to the Sun on 13th August 2015. Since the voyage was so long and took Rosetta far from the Sun's solar rays, the spacecraft was put into hibernation mode for 31 months and it only woke up in January this year.
An astonishing new study by the researchers of Oxford University reveals that only 8.2% of human DNA is functional. This study contradicts the much-discussed findings of 2012 that almost 80% of human DNA has some role to play. We present you a report on this matter.
Deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, is the special molecule that encodes the genetic instructions used in the development and functioning of living organisms. In case of humans, DNA is tightly packed as long coils in the 23 pairs of chromosomes that are present inside the nucleus of the cell. While one would expect the entire DNA packed in the cells to be functional, in an astonishing new study, researchers from the University of Oxford in Britain proposed that of the entire DNA content, only 8.2% is functional. In order to prove this, researchers performed experiments to identify how much of the human genome has remained the same over 100 million years of evolution. The DNA that is important and performs significant functions do not undergo changes and are carefully retained during evolution. Rest of the DNA which don't perform crucial roles and undergo changes are called junk DNA. Researchers found that only 8.2% of the total human genome was conserved in this manner, suggesting that only this portion is involved in significant biological functions. Researchers also say that within this 8.2%, not all the genetic material is equally essential and only a little more than 1% human DNA can be directly linked to almost all the human body's critical biological processes. The rest of 7% functional DNA is involved in controlling the genes that operate in these critical biological processes. This new figure contradicts the theory proposed in 2012 that a full 80% of the human genome possesses some necessary biochemical function.
If you are a chicken lover, then it is time for you to be aware, for you might be ingesting some unwanted doses of antibiotics through your favorite dish. The Center for Science and Environment has come up with this alarming information after a lab study on chicken samples in and around Delhi. The results show residues of antibiotics in 40% of the tested samples. Let us see more in this report.
The most recent revelation from the Center for Science and Environment has raised an alarm among the chicken lovers in the country. The biggest study on antibiotics done by the Pollution Monitoring Laboratory of Center for Science and Environment on 70 chicken samples in and around Delhi has shown residues of antibiotics in 40% of the tested samples. These studies suggest that poultry chicken are exposed to heavy doses of antibiotics throughout their short life cycle of 35 to 42 days. This news has caused widespread apprehension as it means that unwanted antibiotics are finding their way to human body and leading to major issues like drug resistance.
Antibiotics in chicken. That is the study that we have been working on now for the past year and a half. It began, as I said, with doctors coming to us expressing concern that they are beginning to see something quite dangerous in their hospitals. They are seeing that more and more patients that they are trying to treat with antibiotics, the antibiotics are not working, that people are resistant to the antibiotics.
The past few decades have seen enormous progress in agricultural production and animal farming to meet the rising demand for food. In this context, the poultry sector in India has undergone a major transformation from being a low-scale activity to a 58,000 crore industry. Use of antibiotics has played a major role in the growth and intensification of poultry sector. Antibiotics are regularly used in poultry sector to prevent and treat infections. They are also mixed with the feed as a growth promoter to make the birds gain weight and grow fast. But reports show that in the recent years, antibiotics are being indiscriminately abused. The chicken samples tested by PML showed the presence of 6 antibiotics, namely oxytetracycline, chlortetracycline, doxycycline, enrofloxacin, ciprofloxacin and neomycin in the muscle, liver and kidney tissues. One of the samples even showed a cocktail of 3 antibiotics, indicating extensive use of multiple antibiotics in the poultry industry. The results have worried the physicians and researchers across the country, as it means that unwanted doses of antibiotics are reaching human bodies through the consumption of polluted meat. This is not only toxic to human systems but also leads to the emergence of antibiotic resistant pathogens. In order to study the link between overuse of antibiotics in poultry farms and antibiotic resistance in humans, CSE researchers reviewed 13 studies conducted by various government and private hospitals across the country between 2002 and 2013. It was found that resistance was very high against ciprofloxacin, doxycycline and tetracyclines. These are the same antibiotics that were detected in the chicken samples. This is indeed a matter of concern, as it means that many fatal diseases like sepsis, pneumonia and tuberculosis treated with these or related class of compounds will soon become incurable because microbes that cause these diseases are increasingly becoming resistant.
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change presented its 5th assessment report in the last week. According to the report, climate change would affect South Asia in many ways. The report was released during an outreach event held in the national capital by Terry. Let us see the report to find out more.
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC) presented its 5th assessment report to all the stakeholders on 6th August during an outreach event organized in New Delhi by the Energy and Resources Institute, TERI. The event was titled IPCC AR5, What It Means for a Stronger, More Inclusive India, and focused on the implications of the AR5 findings for India and other countries in South Asia. According to IPCC's 5th assessment report, human activities is the major cause of warming and climate change since the mid-20th century, and the average increase in the temperature of the Earth's surface has been 0.85 degrees centigrade since the mid-19th century. The report also includes an assessment of changes in the climate system and its impacts observed around the world with special focus on South Asia. According to the report, drastic climatic changes have been observed in South Asia with increased warming and heat wave frequency and change in rainfall patterns across most countries. The Asia region as a whole experienced the most weather and climate-related disasters in the world between 2000 and 2008. The report draws attention towards the rising sea levels due to changing patterns of rainfall and wind and melting of snow as observed in case of Indian Ocean, and warns of severe consequences if this continues.
Well, it is time to take a very short break here. We'll be back with more science news. Keep watching Science Monitor. Welcome back. After the break, you're watching Science Monitor. Genetically modified crops and genetic contamination of traditional food crops has been a subject of controversy for long now. Speculations about the safety of GM crops for human consumption are being raised all over the world. Experts, researchers, scientists, environmentalists all have serious differences over this issue. While a group is advocating the use of GM food, the other is demanding a ban on it. What are GM crops and how do they differ from the traditional ones? Let's see in our segment In Focus.
Debate around genetically modified crops does not seem to end. Past few days have seen developments which show lack of clear direction on the issue at all levels. While it is known that there are groups and activists against introduction of GM crops and food in the country, there are also sections and part of scientific community which see genetic modification as a way for food and nutrition security. Those against GM crops feel genetically modified food is unsafe for human consumption, has health risks and will damage environment. It looks like government is yet to decide which way to go regarding genetically modified food. while the official body which regulates GM crops and food, the Genetic Engineering Approval Committee, cleared field trials of 15 GM crops including rice, mustard, brinjal and chickpea in its latest meeting. Later, there were reports of Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar putting on hold the field trials. However, going by the latest reports, the minister has now hinted that trials may happen since genetic modification is a science and science cannot be ignored. Amidst this debate, let's look at what genetic modification or genetic engineering is. In the nature, genetic material of two organisms gets mixed up in the natural process of sexual reproduction. It may lead to occurrence of desirable or not so desirable characteristics in the offspring, but this process occurs naturally. Genetic modification, on the other hand, means manipulation of an organism's genetic material to add desirable characteristics or enhance the present characteristics by introducing genes from the same or another species. Thus, genetically modified organisms are those which have been created by altering their genetic material in laboratory. The process involves isolating genes of interest from an organism, multiplying them and introducing them into another organism. Genetic engineering has been used in various areas such as research, agriculture and medicine. Commonly used medicine in diabetes called insulin is manufactured using genetic modification. The gene which produces insulin in humans was isolated and introduced in a bacterium called E. coli. The bacterium was made to multiply to make it produce large quantities of insulin. This insulin has been used for people suffering from diabetes. However, in case of agricultural crops, genetic modification has been controversial since these genetically modified crops are ultimately meant to be consumed in large quantities by humans. A section of scientists and activists feel that impact of the introduced genes on humans cannot be known with certainty. In most of the cases, crops are being genetically modified to make them produce toxins which kill their pests or to make them herbicide tolerant so that these crops survive when herbicides are sprayed. For example, GM cotton or BT cotton has been created by introducing genes from a bacterium called Bacillus thuringiensis. These genes produce toxins that kill common cotton pests called bollworm. Genes from the same bacterium have also been introduced in brinjal to produce BT brinjal. In India, cotton is the only plant whose genetically modified varieties have been commercialized. Overall, some 21 crops are under various stages of genetic modification in the country. Though BT brinjal has been approved for commercialization by expert committees, a moratorium on its release was imposed in February 2010 by the then Environment Minister Jairam Ramesh following protests from civil society organizations and farmers.
And what is the contribution of science to this week's history? We shall see in our next segment, History of Science.
The famous Indian scientist Vikram Ambalal Sarabhai was born on August 12, 1919. He is credited with launching the studies in space technology in the country. It was he who started the project termed Satellite Instrumental Television Experiment, known also as SITE, and ensured its success. To foster the quest for scientific knowledge amongst the youth, Sarabhai initiated the Community Science Center in Gujarat. On August 12, 1887 was born the famous Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger, who won the 1993 Nobel Prize along with scientist Paul Dirac. Schrödinger developed a number of fundamental results in the field of quantum theory which formed the basis of wave mechanics. Some of his works form what is known as Schrödinger equations. On August 14, 1941 was born the famous Indian scientist Tirupattur Venkat Chalamurthy Ramakrishnan. He is also known for his singular contribution to condensed matter physics. He is also famous for his work on high-temperature superconductivity. The famous American biochemist Gertie Theresa was born on August 15, 1896. In 1947, she, along with her husband, was awarded the Nobel Prize for Medicine. The couple was awarded the prize for the discovery of the mechanism by which glycogen, a derivative of glucose, is broken down in muscle tissues into lactic acid and then resynthesized in the body and stored as a source of energy.
Let us now have a look at some important science and technology activities happening in India and abroad in our next segment, Science Express.
In order to promote the use of national language Hindi as a medium to propagate science and technology in country, Atal Bihari Vajpayee Hindi Vishwavidyalaya Bhopal, in association with Madhya Pradesh Science and Technology Council and Vigyan Bharati, conducted a two-day National Hindi Science Seminar during 1st and 2nd August. The seminar, covering 8 themes, received 150 scientific abstracts and included research papers, presentations along with discussions on Hindi as a medium for science education, scientific writing and scientific journalism. The seminar was well attended by many senior researchers, science journalists, academicians and students. Dr. Jitendra Singh, Union Minister of State, Independent Charge for Science and Technology and Earth Sciences, during his recent meeting with the Japanese Minister for Science and Technology, Hakubun Shimomura, has extended a hand of scientific collaboration and proposed the revival of Joint Indo-Japan Science and Technology Committee for a more effective coordination between the two nations. India and Japan are likely to collaborate in order to address the issues in the field of health, food, energy and disaster management sectors through application of science and technology. Various topics like research on advanced materials, establishment of an Indo-Japan Joint Center for Life Sciences and Biotechnology, deep water ocean technology, launch of a comprehensive fellowship program for India and Japan researchers, etc. were discussed during the meeting. In a major milestone in India's scientific endeavours in the Arctic region, researchers have successfully developed IND-ARC, India's first multi-sensor mood observatory in the Kongsjorden of the Arctic. The underwater observatory, situated roughly halfway between Norway and the North Pole and at a depth of 192 meters, has been developed by the researchers of ESO, National Centre for Antarctic and Ocean Research, and the ESO, National Institute of Ocean Technology, in association with ESO, Indian National Centre for Ocean Information Services. The observatory is equipped with 10 high-tech oceanographic sensors that are programmed to collect real-time data on seawater temperature, salinity, current and other vital parameters. This data is expected to further our current understanding of Arctic climate variability. A recent study by the researchers of Penn State University now suggests that eating pistachios may be beneficial to people suffering from diabetes. According to the study, patients who consumed 2 servings of pistachios every day were observed to have lower blood pressure and improved neutral control of the heart. Pistachios are high in fat, but they are known to contain good fats, fiber, potassium and antioxidants. Researchers say that pistachio diet in diabetics lowers the vascular constriction during stress, reducing the load on the heart. The study is published in the Journal of the American Heart Association. The two-day 18th Basic Countries Ministerial Meeting to discuss important issues relating to the current UNFCCC climate change negotiations was conducted during 7th and 8th August. The meeting comprised ministers from Brazil, South Africa, India and China, and the discussions were focused on matters pertaining to the ad hoc working group on the Durban platform. The meeting was attended by Prakash Javadekar, Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Mr. Zhenhua, Vice Chairman, Minister National Development and Reform Commission, China, Ms. Teixeira, Minister of Environment, Brazil, and Ms. Muleva, Minister of Environmental Affairs, South Africa.
That is all for this episode of Science Monitor. Do tell us, how do you like our program? You can send your feedback and suggestions. Our email ID is news@vigyanprasar.gov.in. You can also write into us at Vigyan Prasar C24, Qutub Institutional Area, New Delhi 110016. That is all for today. We'll be back with fresh news stories on science and technology again next week. Till then, bye-bye and take care.